All right, so China's been all over the headlines. What's going on there? Why did Iran just attack the U.S., and what does it have to do with Russia? We have a Federal Reserve meeting later this week, and Elon Musk just challenged Vladimir Putin on Twitter. Find out what's going on this episode of the NoBS Show. And real quick before we start the show, make sure to check out the link down below for the NBT newsletter. We just put out a podcast on there that's completely free. I think you'll enjoy it. It covers the 6 market narratives that are currently at play. Now let's go ahead, hop back into the news. So this is just kind of some fun news, but apparently Elon Musk decided to tweet at Vladimir Putin in Russian, well, sort of Russian here. I hereby challenge Vladimir Putin to single combat. Stakes are Ukraine. I don't know what that says, but I'm assuming that this is the translation by pricking of the thumbs. I don't know if they're both diabetic or what this is referring to. It might be a reference over my head. We can kind of tune in to see what Twitter's saying, but Twitter is obviously just memeing the whole situation. To be honest, I hope the situation unravels into a brand new space race. Get a little derailed. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about what's going on in China. So let's kind of do a quick recap of what's been going on in China. They made cryptos illegal. So, the fastest growing, biggest industry is completely locked out of the country. They then had a housing market start to collapse because they were building giant empty cities that no one lived in, which obviously you don't make money doing that. You just spend money doing it, but it looks great on your GDP. They're heavily affected from everything going on in Ukraine. Ukraine's their third largest trading partner, second, I believe. And they just did lockdowns. The lockdowns are a big deal because of all the production it halts in China. And so much comes from China. And if you look at a heat map of all the trade that China encounters, it's literally most of the world. So this could cause more supply chain issues. And if you've been following the show, you've definitely seen the supply chain issues, and we've discussed them a lot. So this is just going to continue to build on top of that. And we've seen this hit the Chinese markets pretty hard. Chinese NASDAQ, which follows ADRs, which are American deposit receipts, which is how U.S. money invests in foreign assets. They melted down another 8% today, and Baba led the way to the downside. We did see some buy pressure off the lows today before it continued to melt down. So as I said at the beginning of this year, though, because a lot of these are down 40%, 50%, and that's partly correlated to just the sell-off in tech in general, but it's obviously been exaggerated in Chinese stocks. I've been trying to warn about this for all the things that we've iterated in the video, but also keep in mind this is a country that's also actively committing genocide, so how well-functioning is society actually going to be? And speaking of the CCP actively doing these things, they've also come out and said multiple times that they disavow Russia invading a sovereign country. Of course, they're also back at home thinking, yeah, because Taiwan isn't a sovereign country, it's just a part of China, we'll just go to war with ourselves, which obviously is not the case from the perspective of the rest of the world. And we've continued to try to get them to back off, and I've talked about this a little bit more on the newsletter, so make sure to go check that out. But we also saw news that Russia is now reaching out to China for military support. Now this is quite concerning, and as far as I know, as far as this video's been out, there's been no report of China really responding to that. But there does seem to be some indication that Russia is causing some turmoil in other areas. And that brings us to this nuclear deal with Iran. And so the nuclear deal with Iran is, the whole trade-off is Iran wants nuclear weapons. We want oil and gas from Iran, even though we could, produce more here. But we won't, because then all the environmentalists like us will go crazy about it or something. For whatever is, we need to have a more nuanced conversation in this country where we can really tackle these issues, and that's not occurring, which is really concerning. Anyways, nuclear deal. The nuclear deal, obviously, complete terrible trade-off. Even Biden's come out saying that he doesn't want Ukraine to have nukes. Although what we've seen in response is I said Ukraine, I meant Iran. Iran to have nukes. And what we've seen is Iran say, oh, we don't want nukes. We just want, hey, how much is it for the nukes? We just want that amount, please. And obviously this is leading to a whole other battle. And the big thing here, what's not really making the mainstream news, I think in a really in-depth way, is that what Iran wants to do is transport a lot of that from Russia and then take the money that we give them and give it right over to Russia. to help build that relationship, which is a pre-existing relationship that they've had for a while. And in response to the US saying, this is a no-go, we're not going to let you do that, we're still banning Russian exports, we've seen Iran then take a missile strike at a US consulate. So this is clear retaliation. We've seen Biden speak out against it, but it's holistically seems like the West is being tested. So when we're really thinking about, China's moves and Iran's moves and Russia's navigation of this environment, they're all just trying to see what the breaking point is. If we can turn the US's attention over to Iran, or we can divert attention over here, or what's China doing, and we can start to try and cause confusion in the conversation and create multiple fronts that need focus, maybe they'll make a mistake, or maybe they'll break some off somewhere, or maybe, the backlash that Europe's getting with the gas prices will, or just in general with raw materials and stuff too. You can't forget about that. And also the hiking up wheat prices. I mean, the ripple effects are extensive on this. So I just think that this is just trying to create a fog of war environment, especially since Russia's completely lost the narrative on this because of TikTok and other social medias, which is why they turned around and banned them all. And China, I think, could be looking at this situation, kind of told Russia to jump off the cliff when they had the meeting at the Olympics. Russia jumped, and now China's sitting there like, oh, that's going really badly. Yeah, good luck with that, is what I'm hoping. It's what I'm hoping has occurred. We've talked about a lot of how a lot of these things will get resolved. It doesn't seem like there's any clear answers anywhere, especially when it comes to the Iran nuclear deal. How's that going to get worked out? I don't see how they're not going to get what they want, or at least not test to see if we'll break, because we won't push more production here. And I think that's probably what will break. And so when that happens, I'm hoping that we have a big push for clean energy. And that would be just really exciting to see, because the amount that society can improve, the amount that we can help the lower class with lower energy prices, it's just massive. It's awesome. Our productivity will skyrocket. That's what I'm hoping, what good can come of at least that small situation. And touching on the Russia-Ukraine situation, we've seen more reports of peace talks. Nothing's ever come of these. In fact, the Kremlin even came out today and said that there was no meeting requested with Putin. And so there might just be trying to cause more confusion there. I think one of the narratives that might be going on here is Ukraine's constantly trying to say that they're having peace talks to try to make it look like Russia doesn't actually want any peace, and that Russia's just hurting the civilians, just to continue to build that international support for them in hopes that one of the NATO members will step into the situation and handle it, which of course no one's going to do, because they don't actually want to go to nuclear war over the Ukraine situation. As awful as it is, the resulting conflict would end far more lives, and it would put these countries at risk, because remember, Russia is still Mr. Big Boy with the most nukes in the world. And Putin right now seems pretty honest when he says that he'll go to World War III with us. So, because we've seen him follow through on most of the things he said. So I think right now we just, they're surrounding Kyiv. I think Ukraine will give Russia whatever it wants at this point. Maybe some agreements gets worked out where Ukraine gets split, and then he ends up kind of just controlling both anyways with, a corrupt government, which he's previously already done before, basically. Can't forget that at Ukraine's last election, they poisoned the runner-up. What's going on there? I mean, that's kind of how I'm thinking about the situation right now. Whatever is going to occur over there is going to occur over there, but the rest of the world doesn't want to get involved. So let's bring it back home. We got a Fed meeting this week. And so the big thing here is that I think clearly what matters more is actually what's going on in the rest of the world, especially around the interest rate conversation. A 25 base point increase on interest rates really isn't that much. And clearly the market's already priced this in. In fact, it's priced in more. And I think that's where the problem is, because I don't think that we'll be able to get all these interest rate hikes off. Especially, China's had lockdowns. We already had a bunch of signs of economic slowing before all of this occurred. Now we have high energy prices. Now we have China locking down. Now we have to build these new supply chains, and inflation's high. And the jobs reports have been good. It just seems like the Fed's going to act off the data they see, and they're going to have to hike interest rates. It would be now. there is a precedent for them doing a 180, a few actually. One as recent as 2018. But the missing factor there is the super high inflation that's paired with it. And so, but even at the end of the day, I'm not worried about any of that as much as I am with tapering off the balance sheet, because we really haven't seen what's going to happen when they do that. Can the fiscal system hold itself together when we stop pumping liquidity into the markets, into the debt markets? So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Let's say there's no interest rate hike, the most bullish outcome possible. I'd still be kind of worried about the reasonings of why. It's all the worst reasons that we want. And for me to really think this market would go up is if we saw something about stimulus coming out. More stimulus maybe could bring some support to this market. However, I just think all these bearish pressures, and we just hit the technical indicators for a bearish market. So, I've been seeing people comment about that. Oh, we're now in a bearish market. If you've been following the NoBS show, we were calling for a bearish market in January. Obviously, if you're following fundamentals, you understand macroeconomics, this has been clearly entering a transition into a bear market for a long time now. And especially since I don't think there's any real clean resolutions to anything going on in the world, it's just pretty worrisome for how the rest of this year could be, or even next year. If we think about previous conflicts like the Cold War or something, these can be 5 to 10 year engagements that have our full attention, and the markets are going to have to react to every piece of news that comes out, which is what we've been seeing occurring. This is a very news and headline driven market right now. And so it's really important to track all those. And so during this time period, I'm actually going long on bonds now. And probably something I could have done a little bit sooner. I've been thinking about that. But I just think that the bond market's going to, especially if we see a crash or something, or a more severe war occurs, you think back to the COVID market crash. When that market crashed, it was clear we're going to bring interest rates negative, prints off stimulus, bonds, $30 price jump. So that's kind of, that's not what I'm expecting to exactly occur, but the potentiality for that seems pretty likely. So I've decided to set up a long position there. And that's been kind of going on what's going on with my trading. But that's what's in the news. So let me know what you think of the new setup. I'm pretty happy with it. We got the 4K cam and the new mic, and it's a ton of fun to set up, and hopefully the sound is pretty good. There's not much of an echo. Yeah, I'm pumped. And so we'll be putting out some new educational content soon. I've already made the intros for that, kind of written the scripts for them. So hopefully we can just chain off a video every day this week and keep you up to date on what's going on and help build your macro framework. And make sure to check out the links down below. Check out that newsletter. I know it's the third time I've mentioned it, but I thought it was a really good podcast, really good quick breakdown analysis just in 20 minutes. And check out our newest clothing store as well in the link down below. Please like, subscribe, ring that bell, and I will see you on the next episode of the NoBS Show.